Hey vinyl community, good morning. This video is going to be in response to a thread from my good friend Chris Propfe, who is doing a numerical theme thread, basically show 5 albums with numbers in the title. So I have picked 5 here. I don't think anybody has shown these yet, but anyway, I'll go through them and we'll have a little fun this Saturday morning. So the first album I'm going to show is by The Doors, and this one is just called 13. This was essentially a hits compilation, the first one that The Doors ever released. I believe it was released in 1970, if I'm not mistaken. And this contains everything from the albums up through Morrison Hotel. You've got Light My Fire, People Are Strange, Backdoor Man, Moonlight Drive, Crystal Ship, Roadhouse Blues, Touch Me, Love Me Two Times, Your Lost Little Girl, Hello, I Love You, Land Ho, Wild Child, The Unknown Soldier. So there's some deep tracks on here. It is not strictly a hits compilation just because The Doors still hadn't released LA Woman, and so you don't have LA Woman, Riders on the Storm, Love Her Madly. So they kind of padded this out with some album tracks that couldn't really qualify as hits, but it's still a great compilation to have if you like the early Doors. And one of the things about the cover is Jim Morrison was getting pretty tired of having his face larger than the other members of the Doors on here. On the back, you can see kind of a picture. It looks almost like it was an outtake from the Morrison Hotel sessions, but it's kind of a grainy little photo, which I think is also very cool. But it's a good Doors curiosity to own. Second one I'm going to show, and of course I'm a huge Beach Boys fan, so I got to show 2020. This was also somewhat of a cobbled together compilation, which was released in 1969. It was essentially the 20th release from the Beach Boys, and so that's where the 20 comes from. But you do not have Brian Wilson on the cover, which is very bizarre. However, they made up for that by including him in the little gatefold there. But this was the Beach Boys' last Capitol album of the 1960s before they changed record labels. And so you got some leftover tracks, some singles on here, some studio stuff that they've been working on. But it hangs together well. I mean, you could have fooled anybody that this wasn't just a proper studio album. The big hits off of here would have been Do It Again and I Can Hear Music, I think was another single that was released off of here. But it's kind of a nice way to end the 60s for the Beach Boys. I really like the late 60s Beach Boys stuff, and this album I think is pretty cool. I like the song I Went to Sleep on here. It's kind of just a mellow, moody, kind of a nice harmonies on here. Dreamy little track, but that's a standout track on here for me. The next album I'm going to show is Rolling Stones, 12 by 5. This was their second American album. This has It's All Over Now on it, Around and Around, which Rolling Stones were still doing Chuck Berry covers at this stage in their career. 2120 South Michigan Avenue, which is the address of Chess Records, where the Rolling Stones recorded a couple tracks just because they were huge Chicago blues fans. They do a cover of Under the Boardwalk, which is so-so. Good Times, Bad Times is on here. Time Is on My Side is another track. And it's interesting because it's got an organ on it, which is different from the single version, which opens up with some guitar picking. So that's kind of an interesting one to have. And they do a version of Susie Q, which Creedence Clearwater Revival also covered. So, you know, if you like your bluesy Rolling Stones, then this isn't a bad place to start. But it's really before Mick Jagger and Keith Richards started churning out a lot of their own compositions. Kind of like the Beatles, how With the Beatles is sort of heavy on the covers, but I still like it. It's a great album to own. Now I'm going to go back even further, and I don't show a lot of this artist on my channel. I'm not a huge fan, but I do like much of his stuff. There's a lot of stuff that I really don't care for, but I don't know. I still have a lot of his records in my collection. I'm talking about Elvis, and this is his Gold Records Volume 2, but it's titled 50 Million Elvis Fans Can't Be Wrong. Rod Stewart and Bon Jovi both parodied this cover on albums of theirs. I believe Bon Jovi's was a box set and Rod Stewart's was a greatest hits compilation, but it's an iconic cover. I love Elvis in the gold lame suit, and the fact that there's about 20 Elvises here, I think is a great image. And then you got a picture of Elvis looking dapper on the back, but this has got, and you know, not really a whole lot of hits on here, even though it's gold records. I mean, the ones that most people might recognize would be One Night, possibly, but it's got A Fool Such As I Need Your Love Tonight, Wear My Ring Around Your Neck, Don't You Think It's Love, I Beg of You, A Big Hunk, Oh Love, Don't, I Got Stung. So by and large, you're sort of, anybody who takes kind of a passing interest in Elvis is not going to know a lot of the tracks on here, but this still covers kind of his late 50s, early 60s period. So if you're into Elvis, you know, and you're starting to collect some of his stuff, I think this isn't a bad place to start, I guess, especially if you want more than just kind of his standard hits, Heartbreak Hotel and Hound Dog and Return to Sender and some of those other hits that we've heard 100 times before. And then lastly, not going to go to classic rock for this one. I am going to go into 80s alternative and Guadalcanal Diary with 2x5. Now, Guadalcanal Diary is kind of classified as jangle pop. They're a part of the alternative movement, but they never really broke through in the way that REM or the Replacements did. But still, they are a fantastic band, especially if you kind of like organic rock. You're not going to have any synthesizers, no drum machines. I mean, it's really just a quartet. But they played great straight ahead rock and roll, and this was by far their best album. It's got Litany, Life Goes On, which I think most alternative fans from the 80s would recognize, but it's a great, great album. They've got Little Birds is just a real clever, slower track. Things Fall Apart, Let the Big Wheel Roll. You know, they got a big sound, but I guess in some ways you can kind of see why they didn't break through. I mean, it's not terribly commercial. I can't imagine a lot of this stuff getting played on the radio, but it's got somewhat of a punk edge to it, but it's more, like I say, closer to, you know, a band like REM, for instance, the Feelies, you know, bands like that. I think it's a little closer in style too, but still great. And I love the album cover. I think it is very cool. So anyway, that is my thread response. And definitely check out Chris's channel. I'm sure everybody who watches my channel is already subscribed, but if by chance you are not, subscribe to Chris's channel. He is a great guy, one of my favorite YouTubers, absolutely. And you can see him on my channel every Thursday. We do our episode with our gang of friends from the VC. Hope you're having a great Saturday, and take care.